programs. And she expects how the Trump administration doled out billions under the Paycheck Protection Program.
It was structured in such a way to make it very hard for business owners of color to get access to this major relief program.
Consumer Advocates' to-do list also includes tightening rules on payday loans, bank fees, and credit report errors. They also hope the CFPB will reverse course from the Trump administration and get back into the business of policing student loans. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
And CVS and Walgreens today started the COVID vaccinations at nursing homes. They're under federal contract to get this done. I'm David Brancaccio. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
ViStar Credit Union is proud to be a production underwriter of First Coast Connect's Friday Roundtable. ViStar, we never forget it's your money. On the web at vistarcu.org.
Baptist Health knows time matters when it comes to stroke. Every minute a stroke goes untreated can mean an extra week of recovery. Recognize symptoms, including face drooping, arm weakness, and speech difficulties. Act fast. Call 911.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
It's the biggest stories from the week and the year. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, we'll take a look back at the week's top stories and the biggest local stories of 2020 with our Friday Media Roundtable. Then later in the hour,
we did quite a few holiday shows in the past, and they had some of our most popular segments on them, so we're bringing some of those back.
A conversation with Ian Mayers, the creator of Swamp Radio, a preview of their holiday show this weekend at the Florida Theater. You can check it out virtually. All of that and more is just ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. Vice President Mike Pence has received the COVID-19 vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech. At a televised event at the White House today, Pence said while the shots will start to reverse the course of the pandemic, more work needs to be done.
With cases rising across the country, with hospitalizations rising across the country, we have a ways to go. And I want to assure the American people that we're going to continue to make sure that our healthcare providers have all the support and resources they need to meet this moment.
Second Lady Karen Pence and Surgeon General Jerome Adams were also vaccinated. In a statement this week, the White House said the Vice President will lead an effort to promote the safety and efficacy of the vaccine and help build confidence among the American people. Healthcare workers are celebrating the vaccine even as they face their most difficult test in some parts of the country. Blake Farmer of member station WPLN reports from Tennessee, which is leading the nation in new coronavirus infections.
On one side of Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, strangers clap for Tisha Akins, the hospital's first vaccinated frontline worker. In March, she volunteered to clean the COVID unit and has done it ever since.
We all pray together every day. We push each other. We don't cry together. We don't stop each other from quitting.
After receiving her dose, she returned to the COVID unit, which has grown to 3 floors in recent weeks. Tennessee's governor, who's resisted mask mandates or restrictions on gatherings, says the state is paying for the Thanksgiving holiday. He's pleading with people not to gather in big groups for Christmas, saying the vaccine will not cure foolish decisions. For NPR News, I'm Blake Farmer in Nashville.
With just 2 weeks to go before the United Kingdom officially leaves the European Union, British companies are stockpiling goods before new rules and taxes apply. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports that's led to massive traffic jams in the northern French port of Calais.
For the last several weeks, the highways in the port of Calais have been clogged with long lines of trucks. The traffic jams are compounded by the fact that there are fewer ferries and trains to carry the rigs across the English Channel due to the pandemic. Sébastien Rivera is head of a French trucking organization. He says truckers are waiting 6 to 10 hours to make the crossing. 70% of what Britain imports comes through Calais, so it's a strategic nerve center, he says. Fluidity is the top priority, and Rivera says a computer system is ready for the new customs declaration starting January 1st, but he fears it may take months for it to work efficiently. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Calais, France.
You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
WJCT News 89.9 is sponsored in part by Humana, offering a variety of plans to fit your needs. Information at 904-303-2505.
And the time is now 9:04. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Michelle Corum. The Air Force is narrowing its search for a new location for Space Command, and Brevard County is in the running. Florida Space reporter Brendan Byrne tells us Air Force officials will meet with state and military leaders next week.
The Brevard area is one of 6 being scouted by the Air Force for a permanent home for Space Command, a U.S. combatant command group that streamlines and coordinates all the military's space-based assets. Air Force officials and engineers visited the Brevard County site last week, reviewing power, communication, transportation, and permitting at the proposed location. Space Florida's Dale Ketchum says Pentagon officials will meet virtually with state leaders next week for further assessment of the site.
You know, Florida has its strengths and capabilities, and we're assembling a very strong team to compete.
Space Command will bring about 1,400 new jobs with 40% uniformed personnel and a 4-star general. The Air Force plans to make an announcement early next year. I'm Brendan Byrne in Orlando.
Right now, 36 degrees in downtown Jacksonville. Due to the low temperature, City Rescue Mission in downtown Jacksonville is going to increase its overnight capacity as well as extend its hours to those who are in need of shelter. They'll stay open each day that temperatures are below 40 degrees. People who need safe shelter can check in on State Street beginning at 2:30.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Merrill. Merrill Edge Self-Directed Investing has tools to help clients find answers to questions. More at merrilledge.com/withinreach. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Finner & Smith, Incorporated, registered broker-dealer.
More COVID-19 vaccines could be headed here to Florida as soon as next week. The city shuts down a motel that had big issues with crime. And Jeff Bezos' ex-wife gives tens of millions to 3 local nonprofits. Some of the stories making headlines this week. Good Friday morning. We're live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, all of the top stories of the week with our final Friday Roundtable of the year. Give us a call now. It's 549-2937. Then later, the holiday sounds of Swamp Radio return this weekend to the Florida Theater. You can watch the show virtually. We'll speak with show creator Ian Mayers. But first, it's Friday, and here to discuss a busy week in the news, we welcome regular contributor Charles Griggs. Hey, Charles.
Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning. Dan Scanlon of the Florida Times-Union is here. Hi, Dan.
Hey, good morning.
Radio host Angela Spears of Angela Spears Communications. Hi, Angela.
Hey, Melissa. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And Tim Gibbons, editor of the Jacksonville Business Journal, is with us as well. Hi, Tim.
Good to be here.
So good to have all 4 of you here for our final roundtable of 2020. Lots to get into this week. We'll go to your calls in a moment. It's 549-2937 to join us. And here are the latest COVID numbers. In Florida, there are now 1,168,483 cases. That's the cumulative total in this state since the pandemic began. 13,148 were reported just yesterday. In Florida, there are 20,305 deaths, 101 new deaths reported in the state from Wednesday. So the bottom line here is that cases and hospitalizations and deaths keep increasing, right? And Governor DeSantis is facing blistering criticism for his overall handling of the pandemic. But at the same time, the governor has also announced the initial distribution plan for the Moderna vaccine here in Florida. This could be happening next week, pending FDA approval. The Pfizer vaccine is already being distributed around the state. And last night, the governor tweeted out that Walgreens will begin vaccinating staff and residents at long-term care facilities in Jacksonville today, several days ahead of schedule. So as we talk about the COVID vaccines coming to the state, give us a call. It's 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax, and our Facebook page is open. Charles Griggs, let's begin with you. Baptist Medical Center and Memorial Hospital are set to be the first to receive the Moderna vaccine in this city, and we also are hearing now from the governor that Walgreens is going to be going out to long-term care facilities today. I think they're going to long-term care facilities, or perhaps there will be some seniors brought to Walgreens to receive the Pfizer vaccine. We'll be following that through the day, but this is certainly welcome news.
It is welcome news, Melissa, as the community continues to move forward with the response to this pandemic. The vaccine is very good news, and the fact that we are handling, the system seems to be handling any distribution problems that may occur early on. One of the challenges with bringing a vaccine to market this fast, this quick, is that typically it's very difficult to get the vaccine where it needs to be in an efficient way. If you've been watching some of the news reports, one of the strategies around, at least around the Pfizer vaccine, was that before or while during they were looking for approval, they were actually producing doses of vaccine, so which made it easier for the vaccine to come to market and be distributed in a way that would be safe and get to the areas where they need it, especially for those people on the front line, as well as the people who are most at risk.
Yeah, Dan Scanlon, the governor's office, is saying the Moderna vaccine can go to a far bigger number of hospitals than the Pfizer vaccine because it doesn't require this ultra cold storage. UF Health Jax is the only hospital in our area that got the Pfizer vaccine shipments earlier this week. And so the Moderna vaccine is found to be just as effective as the Pfizer vaccine. People have experienced some side effects, nothing serious we're hearing. And it will be interesting to see how both Walgreens and CVS work to distribute this medication around our area and around the state, and it certainly can't come soon enough.
Well, I've noticed that Ascension St. Vincent's as well as Memorial Hospital started vaccinating their staff yesterday, so that's great news there for the initial vaccine. And you're right, with this stuff only requiring it to be kept cold and not in sub-zero, that means you can put it on a truck, you can ship it, and the handling makes it a lot easier, a lot quicker. With two out there, both basically doing the same thing, that's great news for Florida. My only concern is NPR reporting this morning, 30 to 40% less of this stuff going out for whatever reason, the initial vaccination. No one's explained why. So
right.
All states are going to get hit.
Yeah. You know, Angela Spears, the governor, said there was a holdup for the Pfizer vaccine. Pfizer pushed back on that and said, no, there isn't.
I saw that last night, as Dan was mentioning, and it's very, very concerning. And you have some leaders in other states who are saying, hey, what's going on? And that is very, very concerning. You know, this week, everybody's very happy. Many are touting this as, quote unquote, the miracle, right? The miracle of 2020, because this is something that we need to positive. So let's just hope that it goes up. We need to find out why that's certain states, or why we're going to get less of it next week.
Yeah, and we're, you know what, Angela, we're having a little trouble hearing you. We're going to try to reconnect you. Tim Gibbons, almost all through this year, we've been hosting guests virtually like everybody else. We are living in a virtual world here at WJCT because of the pandemic. So as we work on that, let me ask you your thoughts about this, how the private sector is is involved in this massive federal effort to end the pandemic via vaccination. Of course, there's been a lot of criticism about the federal and the state response to the pandemic overall, and we are now relying on a vaccine strategy to get us out of this mess. But we're seeing private companies like CVS and Walgreens play a key role, pharmaceutical giants, Pfizer and Moderna playing a key role. And, through the science of their innovation and through their, hopefully, what we'll see are some logistical miracles, we can get this vaccine out as quickly as possible. And if we can get up to 70% of the people vaccinated, we can end this pandemic.
Yes, but a reminder, of course, that even after you're vaccinated, you should continue to wear a mask. It's unclear right now if people can transmit the disease even if they don't have symptoms. You talk about the private sector. One of the biggest things has been in the logistics industry. The challenges of getting this amount of stuff moved that quickly has been something that a lot of people in that industry are focused on, using planes, using trucks and ships with what are called reefer containers that can keep it refrigerated. Obviously, the second vaccine doesn't have to be kept as cold as Dan said, but it's still a huge challenge. I mean, this is not just shipping a bottle of aspirin to a pharmacy. Exactly right. And Charles Griggs, as we've been reporting all week, healthcare workers are the first to get the shot. Leon Haley, the CEO at UF Health Jacksonville, was apparently the first person in Florida to get the Pfizer vaccine. We're going to be seeing residents in long-term care facilities start to be vaccinated around town today. The rest of us, people that are not over 65, people without any comorbidities, as they say, it's going to be a long wait to receive this shot, but it's on the way.
Yeah, that's correct. And one of the things that's been occurring with me personally is that people know that I'm, I work alongside within the healthcare community. So they've been asking me if I'm getting the vaccine, and I don't qualify for it right now. So I wouldn't be one of the people eligible to get it early on. Certainly, as we get deeper into distribution, it'll be my turn to do my part to see if we can get herd immunity for our community. And what we need to do, and one of the symbols that was very important with Dr. Haley receiving the vaccine earlier was that you saw someone in the power structure, in administration, demonstrating that the vaccine was safe to take. Not only that's a move to bring confidence to the community, but also swell some of the fears around people who believe that this vaccine was brought to market too quick.
Dan Scanlon, what about the skepticism we're seeing among a lot of Americans, including even a lot of healthcare workers? They're saying they're not going to step up right away to get the vaccine. They're going to wait and see.
Well, we've only seen a handful, according to network news, of any reactions, and only one that was really serious. What concerns me is even this morning I was surfing Facebook to look for something and found someone who proudly posted on the top of their page, anti-vaxxer, there's other alternatives. And then NPR this morning had a story from some rural part of the country where the mom said, nope, I don't let my kids wear them. I don't wear them. It's no more worse than the flu. And that scares me because if there's 30%, 40% of this population who don't take it, then as some of my guest stars here are saying, then we won't get that herd immunity. It'll always still be out there.
Let's go to some calls now, 549-2937. What are your questions for the Roundtable about both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines? Ann is in Mandarin. Hi, Ann. Good morning.
Hi, Melissa. I heard last night on MSNBC that Pfizer has 2.9 million doses still warehouse ready to go, but the government stopped telling them where to ship them. And then the federal government went around at Pfizer and told the CDC to make all these calls to all the states, telling them they weren't going to get what they were promised in early December. And when the states asked the CDC why not, the CDC said, we don't know. We weren't told. We're just telling you you're not going to.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Ann. And there have been multiple reports on this. Angela Spears, in the waning days of the Trump administration, it sadly is another example of the federal response to this pandemic, simply, according to multiple public health experts, logistical experts, just not being up to par.
That's so true, and that's very disappointing to hear when you hear the company saying it has the doses, right? It's ready to go. But, we were mentioning earlier, Dan mentioned this, I mentioned this earlier, I know you couldn't hear me, but we were mentioning of why. Why is it being stopped? And that's a major question. That's a major concern. We've been touting this as a miracle drug, that we want everyone to take it, but now we're going to stop it. And so, that's a major concern of why. So let's hope that does not happen. Let's hope that those who are supposed to get the dosages will get them, so that so we can go in order. I know there's that tier level that they're doing, the healthcare workers, those in nursing homes. And I was talking with some people, who, it's like this one lady worked at a nursing home, and she was saying she's going to take it, but some of her coworkers are saying, no, they're not going to take it. So we'll have to see what's going to happen with it, who will, if it's going to be a requirement for some businesses. We'll have to wait and see.
Right. And Tim Gibbons, the most common question we've been getting here at the station is from listeners saying, when can I get the vaccine? Where do I need to go to get it? What's the distribution plan? We simply, don't know all of those answers yet. But as soon as we do, we will let everybody know. We're really honestly waiting for more information.
And that is the idea. I mean, we're a big country, and even putting the hiccups aside, this is just a gargantuan effort. The one headline that was one of the other business journals had was basically, when will you know it's your turn to get a vaccine? Someone will tell you. Basically the idea that we have to get through all of the high-risk groups. Remember, the idea is to stop the spread of the disease. So people who are in positions where that spread is more likely, retail workers who deal with dozens of people a day, are going to most likely get it before somebody who's working from home and does not have the same sort of exposure. So as these doses keep on going out, there's plenty of companies who are in the business of administering vaccines, and it's going to still be a long wait. I believe Dr. Fauci said it was the second quarter of 2021. So we still have a few more months ahead of us.
That's right. And if you're just tuning in, it's our final Friday Roundtable of the year as we talk about the biggest stories of the week. Later in the show, we'll round up the biggest local stories of the year. It's 549-2937 to join us as we talk about the week's top stories. Let's take one more call on the news about the Moderna vaccine coming to Florida. Looks like as soon as next week, pending final FDA approval. As we've been reporting, the Pfizer vaccine is already being administered in our area and around the state to healthcare workers first. Walgreens is going to begin vaccinating residents at long-term care facilities in the city today. That according to Governor Ron DeSantis. And so we want to take just a couple of more calls about the vaccine news, and then we will move on and get to some other news and notes from the week. Mike is in Avondale. Hi, Mike.
Hi, good morning. The African-American community has historic problems with accepting things from the medical community. When we did polio, Jonas Salk was the face of polio, and people like Elvis got on the air to encourage people to take it. The Jonas Salk of COVID is a woman named Kizzy Corbett, an African-American immunologist who, there were many people involved. I'd encourage the panel, the medical communities to start embracing Kizzy Corbett as the Jonas Salk of this disease.
Okay, Mike, thanks for that. Charles Griggs, there's skepticism among all Americans about the vaccine, but in particular, communities of color who've had a terrible history in terms of the way they've been exploited by the healthcare research world. They're particularly skeptical. So what do you think is the best way to get past that, and what about Mike's point?
Mike makes an excellent point. We have been seeing particular attention being paid now to addressing this issue of trust in the African American community when it comes to the vaccine. That is important. That was one of the important symbols that Dr. Haley represented. That's one of the important symbols that Ms. Corbett represented. And we continue to see this across the country. I've been participating in webinars and virtual events that all have been addressing this issue. Doctors, medical professionals have been encouraging people in the African American community to trust the vaccine and to do this in an effort to keep their families and the community safe. But it's going to take work because of the mistrust that's been going on and the neglect that's been going on throughout the healthcare industry, along the lines of access and cultural differences between the African American community and the healthcare community. So there's some ground that needs to be made up. I'm happy that we see healthcare professionals and the industry actually doing the work to try to make up the difference in this, especially as it relates to this vaccine. But time will tell. We'll know by early spring if it's having a major impact, if the work is having a major impact to getting the message out that this vaccine is safe and effective.
Lots of calls, emails, and tweets about the vaccines coming to Florida. Here's an email from a listener. You need to give credit to the Trump administration having the vaccines created and produced. Operation Warp Speed has been an amazing success. Thanks for that. Winona in Jacksonville. Winona, hello.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes, my question is about people with transplanted organs. Is there any information on transplanted organ patients? Because, see, we don't have an immune system because of the drugs that we have to take. So is there any information as to whether the vaccine would do any damage to our organs?
Thanks for that question, Winona. You know, Dan Scanlon, we've received so many questions like that. People with various immunocompromised medical conditions really don't know what to do. The advice I've been getting is that they should talk to their primary care provider about their situation before they make a decision on a vaccine.
Correct. There's a lot of medical reasons why your immune system can be compromised, and that doesn't just include those who have received donated organs. Certain drugs and such, certain illnesses that you have could make you wide open. That's why mask.
That's right. Okay, keep masking up, everyone, even though the vaccine is here. And Winona, anyone listening and who has a question about whether they should get the vaccine, talk to your doctor and discuss your particular situation. I don't know the answer to your particular question about research on organ transplant patients, Winona, so talk to your doctor. And it's our Friday Roundtable, the biggest stories of the week and the year, 549-2937. Lots of other headlines to get into. The New York Times last night reported that a threatening note was taped to the back door of the Duval County Democratic Party headquarters this week. "We want blood," the note read. "You lost the election. Redress our grievances now, or we will be back later." There is also surveillance video of the suspect dropping this note off at the back door, Angela Spears. And, you know, the election's over. The votes have been certified. Joe Biden is president-elect. However, millions of people across this country incorrectly believe that the election was stolen from President Trump. And unfortunately, there have been far too many threats of violence, including here in our area. Including, go ahead, Angela.
I was just going to say that, Melissa, it's a shame that we still have this assault on our democracy, first and foremost. We had a free and fair election, and at this point, when it was decided back in November that Joe Biden is our president-elect, Kamala Harris is our vice president-elect, we as a country, we have to move on and accept a free and fair election. I think it goes back to when we were children, how when we played games, that we learned that if you did not win, that you went ahead and you shook the loser's hand and you said, good job. And that's what I think that we need to do at this point. And it's really sad that people are still threatening others, right? We're seeing it here in Jacksonville with that letter. We're seeing it all over the country with people coming back and saying, hey, you know what, we're going to do this to you, do this to you. Why? We had a free and fair election. This is what our democracy is. Sometimes we always know when you have a football game, right? There's a winner and there's a loser, and we have to move on and accept that.
Right. I mean, let's be clear. President Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr, along with elections officials across the country, have affirmed that the election was conducted in an above-board manner, the Department of Homeland Security as well. There is simply no widespread evidence of voter fraud, and we just want to reiterate that. Dan Scanlon, you have looked at the police report from this incident. You're the Times-Union's police reporter. Can you tell us more?
Well, apparently early on the 14th, police were dispatched to the headquarters, which is literally down the street from where I live. It's in a shopping center, and they found the note taped to the back door, and security camera video that's been posted shows a man in a gas mask coming out of the woods behind it and planting it on the door, and it's got photos of Daniel Henry, who's the head of the party in this area, and others. It says, "You lost the election, redress our grievances now, or we will be back later, we the people." And there were threats to these people. Daniel himself on TV last night was very concerned to realize that somebody was threatening his life and those that he cares for.
This is scary stuff, Charles. There have been calls from some supporters of President Trump to institute martial law. There have been other threats of violence. More than 120 Republicans in the House of Representatives, including two from our area, John Rutherford and Michael Waltz, signed on to an amicus brief essentially supporting a lawsuit from Texas to throw out the election results in multiple other states. We are in an unprecedented place in this country in terms of Americans not participating in a shared reality anymore, which is very dangerous.
And that comes from the top, Melissa. It stems from the top. I think what's probably more upsetting about this whole situation is that leadership from elected officials from the local level all the way up to the top many of them have fallen in lockstep with this type of rhetoric and will not and have not come out in the open and just condemned it, so that we can we can proceed with a smooth transition of power in a situation where this country has proven that democracy rules. What is going on right now is really upsetting, and it's appalling that we have leaders, and I'll say local as well, who do not speak up and speak out against this type of behavior. It is no evidence to say that the election was rigged or stolen, and yet we cannot and have not. We have many leaders who just will not, still to this day, have not referred to President-elect Biden as President-elect, and it's outrageous. It's outrageous that we have people in this community, as well as on the national level, that have not come to their senses and done the right thing.
Tim Gibbons, there's also talk that on January 6th, when Congress performs its ceremonial role of tallying up all of the certified electoral votes, that there may be an effort in Congress in the final days before the inauguration on January 20th to try to, again, call for alternate slates of electors in multiple states to essentially subvert the election and throw it to President Trump.
Yeah, and I mean, we're in a situation where there's basically a loyalty test in the Republican Party. The politics is hard. It's always been a challenge for people who lose to accept the results of an election. I mean, if you remember back 4 years ago, there were supporters of Hillary Clinton who, online proposed the idea of doing something like that. The difference is that they were random people on the internet versus people actually in Congress. So I think this is a sea change where you're seeing a Republican Party that demands absolute loyalty, and this is how people are showing it.
It was interesting to see footage from 4 years ago of a couple of members of the House in this process on January 6, 2017, saying they didn't support the election and calling for, refusal to accept the election. There was no one in the Senate who would step up to support that. And without a bipartisan move to that regard, the whole thing died, and Vice President Biden shut the whole thing down. Now, we are hearing that Vice President Mike Pence is going to certify President-elect Biden, not certify him, but simply formalize what's already been certified and then leave the country on an overseas trip. That's the latest we're hearing. 549-2937, Linda in Mandarin. Hi, Linda.
Hi. I heard the young man just said, people have always had difficult times losing. Yes, wasn't there the heartbreaker of 2000 that went on for 500 and something votes? But we don't need to normalize actions by people that represent us, such as Representative Rutherford. They committed a seditious move on the United States of America and all of its citizens by attempting to nullify votes in another state. It wasn't even your state. Why would you have a say? All of these fake Republicans who always like to talk about states' rights, but only the states, if they want to have the right. It is really a travesty. We need to really talk more strongly. This is our government that the people fought for decades, and we don't need to normalize the behavior because of a loyalty test. We don't have loyalty to a king, okay? So if we don't have loyalty to a king, we should call out our representative that signed on and said that we should nullify millions of votes, all in that state, not only Democratic but Republican. Just throw out those votes. Let's not normalize it. And we need to call Representative Rutherford to task for that. If we had a recall option, I'd push the button right away. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Linda. It's John Rutherford, Michael Waltz, Ted Yoho, also in our listening area, and a number of other representatives from Florida took part, along with Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, Dan Scanlon. There were 18 attorneys general who signed on to this.
I have no comment. I have no comment on that. I cannot fathom how highly placed elected or appointed officials can do that when the numbers prove it differently, and the highest federal officials have stated that the election was just fine, done just fine with minor problems, and every lawsuit got turned down, some literally at the front door of the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's all I can say.
Okay, and if you're just tuning in, it's our Friday Roundtable with Dan Scanlon, Tim Gibbons, Angela Spears, Charles Greggs, and myself as we talk about the biggest stories of the week. In a little bit, we'll talk about the biggest local stories of the year in a little bit of a round robin. But also making headlines this week, the business license for a Northside motel that's been the scene of multiple homicides and other crimes in the last year has been suspended by the state. This is after many efforts from Jacksonville and Florida officials to shut it down. The Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation took this action Tuesday. City Councilman Reggie Gaffney had been calling for a while to close down the Gold Rush Inn on Hartz Road a few days after a 34-year-old man was found dead near the motel on November 21st. Angela Spears, this city has had a long-standing crime problem. This is just one example out of many. And unfortunately, we're closing out the year with record homicides. This particular place, the Gold Rush Inn, had domestic violence calls, armed assaults, and homicides, and drug deals going on at this location.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Angela.
My question for Melissa, the question that I have with all of this, or the concern that I have, yes, that's a problem, and it needed to be addressed, but was there a plan to kick all, because there were some people who were living in the motel, families, because they have no other choice, right? That's what they can afford. So those families, was there a plan in place to say, hey, how can we, maybe at the beginning of the year, if we knew this was going on all year long, I just think the plan was just very sudden to kick everybody out, is what I'm saying. It was just very sudden. Was there a plan? I agree that, yes, we have to tackle these issues, because all those things that you said, it's a shame that that's going on there. It's an eyesore as people drive by. We know that, Melissa. But what about those people who are just trying to make it? Now where are they going to go? I know the city is helping them, but was there a plan in place, beforehand, or is this just a sudden reaction? And sometimes we cannot be reactionary. We have to have things in place. I think as a city, as a sheriff's office, having it in place to say, hey, here's what we're going to do over time. If we see this is a problem, let's start addressing it, right? One by one, and it's just kind of an extreme reaction for those people who are legally living there, who were legitimately just trying to make it. That's my concern.
Thanks for that. And at the same time, Tim Gibbons, there's a move on the city council to start a nuisance abatement board. What do you think about that?
Right. I mean, that is one of those things that people have called for a while, because the idea is that there are these problem properties. But Angela's point is well taken. A lot of times it's easy to simply say, we'll shut it down. Some of these operations are there for a reason, and it's not simply criminal behavior. There are people who need those for housing. So it is a more complicated question, and it's possible that a nuisance abatement board actually could be a piece of the puzzle, because it would let more of a process go through rather than just, jumping to do something.
Charles Griggs, at the same time this is going on, the city, as I said, is closing out the year with another dismal violent crime record. City Council is making some moves to deal with racial inequality and underserved neighborhoods. Long overdue, critics say, but they are looking at it. They are trying to allocate money toward it. We'll see what 2021 brings, right?
Right. We've been looking at it for, 30, 40 years now, probably even more. The problem is that it hasn't been a real priority at the top of the list. And as long as we don't take an overall holistic root cause view of this problem, we won't get anywhere in solving it. People expect for crime to go away with a few short measures, things like more law enforcement, more adjudications. You can't clean it up like that. People aren't born criminals. They develop into that situation. They emerge from their circumstances, their environment, in places where they don't want to be, and they're often left in a situation where crime and violent crime is the answer to them. So you're not going to enforce your way out of that. And here, even in this situation, we see the example of what more enforcement has done. One problem begots another with displacement of residents. So we have to take a larger view of what is needed to be done from an equity standpoint. And I understand that there are commissions and committees looking at this, but it has to be a top priority. We need to be discussing this on the same level as we're talking about a Lot J and other problems and other issues in the community. Until we do, we're always going to have this problem.
Dan Scanlon.
Well, city officials did tell me on Wednesday when this started happening that there was going to be some help offered to those folks who were being kicked out of the place, evicted with the suspension of that license, number one. Number two, a number of these crime problems have occurred in that 10800 block of Harts Road, not necessarily at that hotel. Gaffney himself protesting that the motel across the street also had major issues, including suicides that weren't being reported. And number three, some residents who were being kicked out, I heard, were saying that they're not the problem. It's the fact that that area is drawing people because there's empty lots next door. There's places where you can congregate and do a drug trade that goes bad. So don't blame that facility per se. Blame people who are congregating there. But yeah, we're almost at 180 homicides right now, and we still have almost 2 weeks left to this year. It's going to be a heck of a year-end present when we take a look at these numbers.
It sure is. And it's pretty depressing to contemplate that year in, year out, we keep seeing the same problems. All of us have been reporting on this for some time, and it is pretty depressing. And we can keep holding public officials accountable, keep demanding more aggressive action on this. That's all any citizen can do. But on a more positive note, we want to make a mention of another headline from the week that brought a lot of smiles around town. 3 Jacksonville nonprofits received huge donations this week from philanthropist Mackenzie Scott, the former wife of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. She's the 18th wealthiest woman in America. She wrote checks to nearly 400 organizations this year, but here is who got the goodies in our area. United Way of Northeast Florida, $20 million. Goodwill Industries of North Florida, $10 million. These donations are the largest single gifts in each organization's history. The First Coast YMCA also received an undisclosed amount from Ms. Scott. Tim Gibbons, Mackenzie Scott has just done an amazing act of philanthropy across the country. She was motivated to act from the pandemic and its economic impact. Her team vetted all the organizations that they donated to make sure that they met certain benchmarks. But these are game-changing donations for this community and many other communities.
They are, and it's interesting. You mentioned the vetting. I think that's a slightly underreported part of all of this is the amount of work that went into picking the recipients. That these organizations can also use this as a point of pride, as a thing to go to other donors and say, after a rigorous sort of look at us, we were picked as an organization that has good governance and uses the money effectively and is going to take those funds and have, as you said, a transformational effect. There's been a rash of philanthropic news actually this week. You had Miller Electric Company giving $1 million to the United Way specifically for social justice issues, Community First partnering with the YMCA on after-school programs. Obviously, the end of the year is always very important for philanthropies. I think it's something like 70% of their fundraising is done in the last 3 months. But this end of this year, there's needs, there's social justice needs, there's basic human right need, things like housing and food, and people are stepping up to try to address those challenges, which is a good way to end the year.
It really is. Charles Griggs, these donations from Mackenzie Scott are concentrated on nonprofits working on issues of food insecurity, racial inequality, poverty, and low access to capital. She paid particular attention to nonprofits and colleges, particularly historically black colleges and small state colleges that serve kids of color. She paid particular attention to groups that are trying to help marginalized and underserved Americans. And so that was really just an amazing thing to see.
I think also, Melissa, what was important in her statement that she published is alongside the announced donations was that these gifts are unrestricted. And oftentimes these nonprofits or these institutions that receive money from philanthropic dollars, they are restricted dollars that say they must do a certain thing in a certain time in a certain way. Because these dollars are unrestricted, these organizations, especially these historically black colleges and universities, get to use these dollars, these funds, whatever way they see fit, where they can figure out their own best deeds for the day and for the future. So more philanthropy like that would certainly go a long way to help solving problems instead of working alongside the organization's mission that is donating the money.
And here's some more positive news for the new year. Boeing is expanding in Jacksonville. The Jacksonville Aviation Authority and Boeing announced Thursday they've entered into a 25-year lease agreement to expand Boeing's operations at Cecil Field. This will bring 400 more jobs to Cecil Airport. At the same time, more airline routes are coming to JIA. JetBlue says it's going to start nonstop flights to LA and Raleigh-Durham. Southwest is adding nonstop flights to Washington, D.C. and St. Louis. Dan Scanlon, you've been reporting on this. So some positive jobs and aviation news for when we can all travel again at some point.
All of these are places I want to go to, and a nonstop to LA and back again is a wonderful way to start feeding maybe the film industry that we've got here in Florida that needs some help. It's just a great option, and of course, they're all going to be starting this in February or March, so hopefully by then you can travel a bit safer.
That's right. And before we wrap this up, let's do a round robin and ask our panel what they think was the biggest local story of 2020. I'm going to begin with the RNC that wasn't. The Republican National Convention was going to come here. It almost came here, but in the end, it did not. And some people were very upset about that. Others were elated. That was sort of the story that didn't happen. So that's my contribution to the biggest story of Jacksonville's 2020. Angela Spears, what's yours?
Oh, wow, there's so many things. I can't remember if JEA part of the ending it was last year, this year. The other big story that we know, of course, Lot J. People are still talking about that. If that's going to happen or not, when it's going to happen. So that to me is one of the biggest top stories here.
Tim Gibbons.
I was going to do JEA because
we should have given
so
you guys
ago.
more of a heads up.
That was the story of the year. But no, actually, I think particularly for the Business Journal, obviously the pandemic is the story nationally, but the efforts locally to help small businesses. The city did some good things, but primarily businesses themselves stepping up. The creativity and the generosity that some in the business community showed to help those who went through what for many small businesses was just a horrific year. That actually was, if there's a heartwarming sort of story for the year, it's that generosity and creativity.
Absolutely. Dan Scanlon, your thoughts?
Well, I think obviously the summer protests that we had in Jacksonville and elsewhere over the police shootings of black men, as well as the release of police-involved shooting videos, and the fact that even as late as a few weeks ago, a national civil rights leader was asking for independent investigation into at least one of those. The good news would be we finally have a car museum, the Brumos collection. It's an amazing place, and word is they might open up again in January.
Oh, very nice. And Charles Griggs, 1 minute left.
All right. Well, mine is obviously, and it will always be crime, a violent crime problem. We talked about that a little earlier. We have too many homicides going on in this community, and we haven't done nearly enough to resolve those issues, especially since we used to have a program, an excellent program that worked called the Jacksonville Journey. And for whatever reason, it's no longer a part of our community, and we need to get back to approaching this problem. Yeah.
Thank you, Charles, Angela, Dan, and Tim. Have a great holiday, guys. Thanks so much.
Happy holidays.
Happy New Year.
Happy holidays, yeah.
Okay, in a moment, Swamp Radio creator Ian Mayers on his holiday show this weekend at the Florida Theater and how you can zoom onto it. We'll be right back.
Congaree and Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm. I'm Wayne Hogan. Holiday shopping helps share the joy of the season with family and friends, but some toys are defective. Our website has links to help avoid dangerous toys.
More at terrellhogan.com. On the next Science Friday, how peering millions of years into the past can help us picture the Earth our children will inherit.
Even in the Pliocene, which we consider a moderately warm greenhouse climate, Greenland's gone, West Antarctica's gone, and so you've got 10 meters, 20 meters of sea level rise. That's extraordinary.
It's the Wayback Machine for Climate Change on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
It's the biggest stories affecting the Sunshine State. Hi, I'm Melissa Ross.
And I'm Tom Hudson. Join us Friday for the Florida Roundup.
Each week at noon, we interview newsmakers and people from across the state discussing the stories and issues that affect your life. What's driving the conversation in Florida?
Join the conversation on the Florida Roundup.
Every Friday at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
This took 6 weeks, but it was still too soon for the president.
The Electoral College has spoken.
Joe Biden's latest cabinet picks are poised to make history, plus the vaccine arrives. One nurse in Queens, New York leads the way as Dr. Fauci wishes us a merry little Christmas, emphasis on the little. It's the Friday News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, it is the local live variety radio show that celebrates the magic and quirkiness of Northeast Florida. Swamp Radio's holiday show returns to the Florida Theater stage this weekend, and you can join it virtually. I got a preview from show creator Ian Mayers. Ian Mayers, so good to talk to you. Thanks for being with us.
Happy holidays, Melissa.
You too. And it's exciting to talk about the new edition of Swamp Radio that you created, this live radio experience celebrating Northeast Florida. Special holiday reunion show coming up next Tuesday at the Florida Theater. So what is going to be on the agenda?
Well, we're getting the band back together.
Nice.
And we did quite a few holiday shows in the past, and they had some of our most popular segments on them. So we're bringing some of those back, and then some of our writers are bringing some new stuff to the show. And, of course, we have all the wonderful Northeast Florida musicians that we feature. And that's always been a big part of our show. We have Duffy Bishop, fabulous blues singer out of St. Augustine, and we have Bad Dog Mama, another great band out of Northeast Florida, as well as the Swamp Band. So I'd like to say it's holiday comfort food for grown-ups.
Very nice. You know, this is awesome because not only are you doing a live performance on stage at the theater that everyone can watch on Zoom, this is also a way to support the Florida Theater Worker Relief Fund to help this sector that has had such a horrible year dealing with the COVID pandemic. So tell us about that.
When the Florida theater workers are doing their job well, you don't notice. And that is the case over at that really special building. So many of the staff, really creates an effortless experience for all of us when we go to a live show there. And the theater's been dark for quite some time. They've just started doing shows again, and this has really put such a strain on households. There's been an increase in, the need for mental health counseling, for addiction counseling, all sorts of things. And this is a way that folks can, turn to the Florida Theater and get some help. And it just feels great to be able to give back.
Yeah, I mean, this is helping stagehands, artists, musicians. These are important contributors to the arts and entertainment sector in our city and the downtown economy, too. So, it's exciting, too, to see that you're continuing on with this tradition of Swamp Radio, which you came up with several years ago. And, of course, we've aired some of the Swamp Radio shows right here on 89.9.
Sure, you guys aired all 3 of our seasons.
That's right.
And it is, it's a holiday tradition, and it's also just a way for all of us to feel connected simply by, just getting on our computer or our TV at home. You can take a look at the spiffy new seats at the Florida Theater, and, we can feel connected as a community. And that's a really important moment for all of us.
Yeah, we need that more than ever.
Yeah, man. So it's like, great. You can put on your Christmas jam, some thick socks, a cup of cocoa. You might spike it.
I know you will, Ian. I know you will.
I don't drink, but
you don't? Okay.
I don't. But Phil McDaniel from the distillery in St. Augustine is going to be on to talk about some special holiday beverages they're doing, and Allison down at 1748 Bakehouse is going to talk about Christmas cookies and Christmas pies. So it really is just the kind of conversation you'd have at a large family gathering, except we're going to keep it distant and stream it. And we're all going to talk about this in years to come when we're able to all sit around the table together again.
That's right. And hopefully at this time next year, we'll be talking about a live show with a packed house, not a distanced one. But in the meantime...
Amen, sister.
Yes. My gosh. But in the meantime, get your tickets now for Swamp Radio. They are returning for a special holiday reunion show Tuesday night, December 22nd, 7:30 p.m. This will be performed live at the Florida Theater, and you can watch the live Zoom broadcast. Proceeds go toward the Florida Theater Worker Relief Fund. Go to swampradiojacks.com. Swampradiojacks.com. Get your tickets. It's a suggested donation of $25. And support this amazing locally produced live theater and radio experience by the wonderful Ian Mayers. So good to hear your voice, Ian, and I'm so glad you're continuing on with this.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Again, it's swampradiojacks.com. enjoy the show. And that's our show, our final show of the year. My gosh, what a year it's been. Thanks to everyone who's helped us get this show on the air every single day. All of our guests and callers, along with producer Heather Schatz, director Josh Torres, news director Jessica Palumbo, and Bill Bortsfield, our digital editor. Have a wonderful holiday break, everyone. Whatever you do, please do make it a little Christmas, as Dr. Fauci said. Don't go to big holiday gatherings. Keep masking up. Let's be safe through this holiday. I'm Melissa Ross. This is First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9. We're going to take a little break here locally on the show, but we'll be back on Monday, January 4th, 2021 to kick off the new year. Have a safe and happy holiday, and we'll see you next year.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.